Thank you for checking out Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. I am your host, Mark. And Stephen Lawrie grew up with music. His dad was approached by Chas Chandler before he signed Jimi Hendrix. But his band broke up before they signed a contract and were lost to history. But his father's love of music transferred to Stephen. He remembers being mesmerized by guitars as a toddler. He formed the Telescopes in the late 80s and has been the only consistent member. In fact, the most consistent thing about the Telescopes has been change. Whether it's band members or the sound of the music itself, no Telescopes album is the same as the previous ones. Stephen admits that the band stopped doing anything when he lost the inspiration to write. He also admitted that sometimes he's been more inspired by what he didn't want to do than by what he did want to do. He tells me how the fourth Telescopes album was a direct result of not being able to play the third album live. And speaking of live Telescopes, the band has a policy of never turning their amps off during a live show, even when they're done. They just see how long it takes for the venue to turn them off. So check out Stephen and the Telescopes on the socials, pick up the Telescopes albums on Bandcamp, and also check out Foam Giant, a new project he's been collaborating on. Check us out at Performance ANX on social media, rate and review the episodes. And you can support us through ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety or by buying merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Remember to check out all the other great shows on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and thank you for listening to Stephen Lawrie on Performance Anxiety.
Right, I'm Stephen Lawrie from the Telescopes and Foam Giant, and you're listening to me chatting away on Performance Anxiety.
I am so glad Ricky connected us, because I've had a chance to go back and listen to the music that I wasn't familiar with, and listening to it, and I hate that I wasn't familiar with it until now, because man, it's so good.
Well, thanks.
So the way I like to start everything is to kind of find out how you got into music in the first place. Were your parents big into music, or were you taking lessons early on as a kid? What was really drawing you, or was there a draw to music early on?
Yeah, I mean, since I was a toddler, really, it sort of caught my attention. But no, I didn't have any lessons. My father was in a band in the 60s.
Oh, cool.
He was about to be signed up by Chas Chandler, who from the Ex-Animals, who went on to sign Jimi Hendrix and stuff. But his band split up.
Oh my God! Isn't that amazing? You're about to be signed, and then you split up. Like, it's amazing how. And I, not being in a band on my own, it's hard for me to imagine how the band dynamic gets to the point where we're about to sign and be a signed band, but we can't keep it together.
Yeah, I mean, from what he's told me, there was some erratic behavior and stuff like that, and but I think he just had other responsibilities. He's going to university and stuff like that, and getting married, and just went down a different path.
Yeah, it happens, man. That's life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid sort of meeting the guitarist out of his band and him showing me an electric guitar, and I just thought that it came from Mars or something like that. I just couldn't stop looking at it,
Wow.
It looked like a spacecraft or something like that, and it's just mesmerized by it.
Oh, that is so cool. So guitar was the first instrument that you picked up?
A long, long time later in my teens. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a bit earlier. I think I was given an acoustic like just before I went into my teens, but it just sat there in the room and it was alien to me, And then I think once things in life started becoming a bit trickier in my teens and everything, and various things going on, I started turning to the guitar more, and I was amazed how quickly how easy it was to learn 3 chords, and then how many songs were 3 chords and stuff.
Yeah. yeah, when you start to figure that out, I guess it kind of opens up a whole lot for you, and it makes you wonder why it was so mystifying in the first place. But I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest with you.
And then it's fascinating, like the chords, the songs that have only really got one chord in them.
Yeah.
But you don't really realize it until you sit down and work it out.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with the stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Try doing that in person. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself, because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to Performance Anxiety listeners: you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. That's betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
How old were you when you started playing with other, in bands and hanging out and playing with other people?
Probably 16, something like that.
Okay. Did you jump right into gigging, or were you guys just kind of like playing in the garage or in the bedroom?
It was a garage band for a while, and then it started developing into going out and doing pub gigs, but it was kind of going nowhere, Like,
yeah. Were you singing in that band?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much started that band, but it ended up with others in it who then became writers and shared singing, and I just couldn't stand what everybody else was doing, so I left.
That's the best answer I've ever heard.
Yeah, sometimes you're more inspired by what you don't want to do,
That's awesome.
You might not know what you want to do, but you certainly know what you don't want to do.
Oh, that's for sure. Well, how did you meet the other members of the original lineup of the Telescopes?
Most of them were in that band I left.
Oh, really? Oh, man. So Telescopes were kind of your second band?
One by one, they all started. I mean, I went through a lot of drummers at first. There was different drummers and bass players, and they all kept leaving because of the guitarist. They didn't think he was a very capable musician, and all the reasons that they gave me for wanting to get rid of him just made me want to stick by him and get rid of them.
No. Oh, that is awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And then since then, it's just the lineup's constantly changed,
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that. But I've also noticed that the sound has changed a lot too. But
well, yeah, I mean, that came from, it naturally evolved out of a kind of noisy sort of angsty sort of thing, it's a bit more poetic than some, it wasn't just 1, 2, 3, go, it was
right.
But all of that sort of, I don't know, after a while you feel like you've got that out of your system, and you're doing shows and you're playing to people who haven't got that out of their system, and it just keeps going round and round, and you're getting, back then we used to get spat at, bottles thrown at us, all sorts of things. And, it wasn't because they didn't like us. It was like, that was just how people showed their appreciation. I think it was like a hangover from punk shows, because a lot of the DIY sort of independent shows that went on back then were came out of that scene,
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, punk triggered a lot of DIY stuff in England, and like kind of invented the pub rock scene as well. Well, that came a little bit before.
So what time? What was this, like the mid 80s, later 80s?
This would be like late 80s going into the 90s. And like, I just started, you see that I started gravitating more towards the studio and away from that kind of stuff. And the vibe was starting to change with the music and stuff over a course of EPs, and then the second album was completely different to the first one.
Yeah.
Now, at the time when that landed, that was a massive shock to people.
I can imagine.
Fans, journalists, all sorts. They pretty much turned on us.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I listened to the first album, and it's actually really cool because I'm trying to put myself back in like my mindset. What would my mindset have been back in '89? And Taste would have just kind of absolutely blown me away.
Well, that went down a storm, that went down an absolute storm. And, but the change with the next album was just too much of a shock for people. And it was less noisy, which was, to me, kind of interesting since that one was a Creation release. Yeah.
Which seems to be the opposite of what Creation was doing at the time.
Well, I mean, when that dropped and the reaction it got, Alan just turned around and said, it's a lost classic. And years later, he's proved right. I mean, over the course of from 1990 to 2000, like with the dawning of the internet and stuff like that, it became apparent that it had a massive effect on people, that album. There's bands that had formed around it, like Brian Jonestown Massacre for one, and they, I know that because they told me.
Yeah.
And like so there was a huge turnaround to the point where even journalists that had completely slagged it off back then were now calling it a lost classic. I read that in the NME, and just all these other bands that were coming up, like Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, they were like, they were doing interviews with journalists that had slagged off the album, and they were saying the Telescopes were great, So there was a complete turnaround, and I looked at all that and thought, well, hang on, this gives me a lot of freedom now, this does, because the third album can be whatever the fuck I want it to be,
Yes, exactly.
I can just go with what inspires, and I don't have to worry about all this scene shit or anything like that, or any other kind of media bullshit,
Exactly.
No offense to the media. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm not anti-media.
Right. Well, you're doing this podcast, so,
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know how much you count me as media, so, whatever. But
that's all media, isn't it? And records are media.
Yeah. Well, I really did enjoy the change in the sound from the two albums. I mean, ever so High on Fire, so much different from like Suffocation, Seventh Number Disaster. It's just such a shift. I love stuff like that. It's just great. And I can definitely, like you were saying, I can definitely hear how it influenced Brian Jonestown Massacre. And I first thing I thought of when listening to some of this was early Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. I can definitely hear your influence on them, and they're one of my favorite bands of all time. So, you know,
but it's not just psych bands either. It's like all kinds of bands come to us because the back catalogue is kind of varied. There's electronic albums and acoustic albums, all sorts, you know.
Oh yeah. And then when you
Drone album.
Yeah, and then so after 92, the second album, The Telescope stopped recording. You know, was it a complete breakup, or did the band just go on kind of an indefinite hiatus? Or did you know at the time?
Not really. I mean, at the time, I just couldn't see the wood for the trees. Really, there's too many cooks, you know, and it was all losing focus about what it was originally about, and I just crashed from it. You know, I mean, I've always been the sole writer, and like if I lose my focus, that's it. You know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, so like, I didn't know if I'd get it back or whatever, you know. But over time, you know, certain things started to inspire me again, you know, like home computers and having your own software and stuff. You know, I was then able to like sample and loop and mess around with things, you know, to my heart's content at no cost.
Right.
Doing all that in a studio, like on the second album and all the creation EPs and stuff. You know, you racked up a massive studio bill doing that stuff in the studio. It was stuff that you could do at home, you know, all the time consuming, like, you know, production stuff.
Right. So that led to, I'm imagining that's what led to the Unisex album.
No, that kind of, I was sort of, I mean, bits of that album, the songs that I was involved with on that album are like, yeah, I mean, they've got a bit of that in, but I was pursuing that separately, really.
Want something for nothing, anything you don't get, just as long as it's something. Yeah, want something to show them all you were there. You get it from someone.
Did you start that?
And I didn't realize until I was recording that album with that album that because I was living in the studio like there all the time, and I was staying in the space that had a piano, organs, everything, and I had my own computer set up there. So when recording finished in the day for that, I was working on the next Telescopes album. I didn't know it at the time, but I was coming up with all this music, and I think it was getting together with Randall from Fuchsia, and I was playing him what I was doing. And he's like, and I'd done some work with him, and he was doing some similar stuff. And I was thinking, this reminds me of what I used to do, and that I was doing at the end of the Telescopes, you know, like at the end of that first period, you know. Because I had loads of unreleased tracks that were, you know, like very similar to what was going down on Third Wave.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and I think like it was also Peter Green from Double Agent Records. He was very encouraging. Him and Randall were very encouraging. Like, you really should do another Telescopes. You know, I was playing them this music that I was doing, and I started thinking about the difference between the first and second album, thinking, yeah, this could be Telescopes. I mean, it's got the Telescopes vibe.
And you set up,
but it sounds completely different to the other two albums. But
you've already set that up, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the whole idea of calling it the Telescopes in the first place. You know, it means beyond the realm of natural vision. You know, so it's something that keeps evolving. You know, you get to where you're going, and then from there you see further to somewhere else, and it keeps going. You know.
I thought the Unisex EPs were really interesting, like Full Force of the Sun. Oh, damn, that is a great song. So was that like a project where everyone was contributing to it, or was there a main songwriter? Were you doing a lot of the work there?
That was the main idea, was for everybody to be. It was open for everybody to write, but it ended up gravitating towards two of us. And that's Nick Hemming, who's in the Leisure Society now.
Okay.
Who I named, incidentally.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he's gone on to get awards for music and stuff like that. He's done very well. But we tended to write together and separately. You know, there'd be a couple of two or three that were where he'd do the music and I'd do the lyrics, and then there'd be others that I wrote completely. And yeah, I mean, instrumentals that he did completely.
Okay. And so you ended up basically writing the whole Telescopes album without even realizing it was going to be a Telescopes album.
Yeah, I mean, as it started rolling, it was apparent it was going to be a Telescopes album, and that influenced, you know, how it progressed and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, on that, the lineup was just, I can't remember, it must have been about 20 people or something like that.
Man, did you play that stuff out a lot? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, that's the thing I was going to say next, actually, is, you see, with having a lineup like that, I mean, the instrumentation on that, you've got pianos, you've got horns, sitars, drills, keyboards, loops, beats and stuff like that, and then real drums and all sorts, double bass. And we did one show where we did it completely, and there was just no way we could take that on the road. It was just too much, and we didn't have backing either, you know. Yeah. And so that made me look at the live aspect in a different way. You know, well, we could play versions if we hone this down to a 4-piece. And keep it like experimental with like analog synths and tabletop guitars and stuff like that, and a few little samples that are like loops here and stuff like that, you know. Yeah. Like the Dr. Sample thing going, and you know, Wasp synth, and then maybe we can do versions of the songs. So that happened, and it also we kept a very sort of improvised feel to everything. There was like certain parameters, but they're very loose parameters, and so there's a lot of room for that. And that started developing into what became the fourth album, you know.
I've got some questions about that album. That album.
So that album was a result of not being able to play Third Wave live. Really.
That is great. Now, as I was listening to it, I was reading the notes on it, and so it was created between 2002 and 2004. You're saying it was created using unseen forces and homemade and improvised instrumentation.
Yeah.
What what were you guys doing? What kind of improvised instrumentation, homemade stuff were you doing?
Oh, it was all sorts. I mean, Jerry is no longer with us now. Like, he played the flugelhorn on all of that stuff, but he also did things like, you know, we'd be playing, I'd be like, what on earth's that noise? And you turn around and he's dragging chains across a metal bar and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
He had all sorts of things, and like the guitarist Lauren had like this big sort of like steel drum sort of thing with all these different pallets that had different notes to them and everything, and he'd kind of rotate this kind of ball in that and like put it through his effects and theremins, all sorts. I mean, on some of that stuff, like instead of like using a hi-hat to put some top end in the range when you're recording, we'd do things like just crumple bits of tin foil really close to the mic, and you know, put a lot of compression on it and stuff, you know. I mean, we're doing things like that on the second album as well, with like a song like Spaceships. There's a fizz throughout it, and that's exactly what it is. It's I think we got some Alka-Seltzer and dropped it in lemonade or something like that. And just put that by a microphone. It was really funny because we had to keep redoing it because at the time people wore digital watches and stuff like that. Oh, yeah. Someone's alarm went off on the digital watch and things like that.
That's the kind of stuff that I love. All the weird studio experimentations, and it just makes for such different music, unusual sounds, and stuff that's just haven't heard before. And I love that stuff. And in fact, number 4 kind of sounds creepy. It's almost like a horror movie soundtrack in certain spots. I mean,
I think there was a review that said that it was like a missing soundtrack to a David Lynch film.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. I mean, the hypnotic pulse of the Motor Driven, you know, that sets a tone for the album. It's awesome. But I think my favorite track on that is The Yearning. I love that song.
Folky one,
yeah.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
And it's because everything's so experimental at that time, from number 4 through like up to like Psychic Viewfinder. It's so much of this sounds scary. You know, it sounds like almost like it's coming from a really dark place.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, as those albums progressed all the way through to Harm and stuff like that, it was more about improvisation.
Okay.
But I think Harm was coming out of the improvisation a bit, because I mean, like on Say Infinite Suns, it's pure improvisation. That is, absolutely nothing was planned on that.
That's a wild album.
Yeah, I mean, that was just 2 amplifiers with 1 mic in between.
Oh, wow.
Going straight, a unidirectional mic going straight into a cassette deck.
Wow.
But the cassette deck was, the levels were just that tiny bit too high.
Is that because it sounds almost abrasive?
Yeah, so every now and again you get this like complete sound saturation where the cassette can't handle, the levels can't handle it anymore. I mean, when you do that on digital, you just get glitches.
Yeah.
You know, but on tape you just get this amazing effect. It's like there's another member in the band, you know.
Oh, that's cool.
So I just pick choice bits of that and then just splice them all together. And then, but like from Harm, it's sort of the similar sort of principle, but I started bringing more song ideas back in.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
You know, sometimes if you leave that alone for a bit, you start wanting to do it again, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
and see it from a different perspective as well. Like leading up to that, to me, it was like, why break your back trying to write, you know, like 3 verses, 2 choruses, an outro every time, you know?
Yeah.
Like if the song's only got two words in it, so be it. If it sounds right, if it works, if that's what works, you know, 1 line, you know, or 1,000 lines, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
There's great songs of both kinds, you know.
Exactly, and it sounds like you had given yourself the freedom to just experiment with everything. I mean, it almost sounds like in listening to the EPs up to Harm, it sounds like you're trying to kind of maybe freak yourself out a little bit more with each release. You have a little scarier, a little more horror filmy almost with each release, and just seeing if you could scare yourself. Yeah,
I mean, like sort of, it's just, it's about musical freedom, really. I can't really do that, thing that a lot of bands do where they hit a winning formula and stick to it and repeat to fade, you know.
Yeah.
I tried it, but it just kills creativity for me.
And I didn't notice the band doing a lot of covers at the time, but you do a Nick Drake song, the Black Eyed Dog, and that is wild. I mean, that's a complete 180 from the original.
I mean, he's already done the finger picking perfectly, hasn't he? So you've got to take a completely different stance or not do it at all. That happened by accident. I just put on I was messing around with my Watt synthesizer ready to record something else. And I got the setting going that's on the record and everything. And I just started singing Black Eyed Dog over it.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wow, that actually does work. Of course, it is principally a drone song. There's a lot of finger picking in there, but it's based pretty much around a drone. Every now and again, when I was in between recording other things, I kept going back to that, and I thought, well, I may as well bang down a version and just see what it sounds like.
Well, I think it is so cool. I love that so much. I was listening to the singles that you were listening to that you were releasing, and stuff like Landing Shadows. It's just so dense and abstract that I when I go back and listen to it, I hear new things each time that I listen to it. I love stuff like that. It seems like it's just layer upon layer. influencing you sonically?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of bands, but I mean, that is all improvised, really.
Wow.
So I don't know if I was interested in people like Keith Rowe and stuff, you know, I mean, for AMM, you know, like, I suppose that might have had some influence on it, but then again, it doesn't sound like his stuff, you know, it's got more of a charge to it. Whereas I think his is a bit more academic in a lot of ways.
I mean, you mentioned this a little bit ago with the Hidden Fields. Some song structure comes back into the music where it's not as improvised, but there's still plenty of like the soundscape that you had. There's plenty of that in that album as well, and to me it almost sounds similar to Taste in some ways, where it's a little closer to the shoegaze sound than you'd been in a lot of years.
Which album's this? Harm?
Hidden Fields.
Oh, Hidden Fields, right? Yeah.
Was there a conscious decision to do a little more song structure and maybe less of a soundscape, the super dense soundscape stuff, and maybe a little more of the older Telescope sound?
I think it just kind of happened like that.
Just organic?
I mean, like, I've been doing acoustic shows, and sometimes there'd be bands on, and like they on the same bill, and they'd ask if I'd sing like a Telescope song with them, like if they did a version of a couple of Telescope songs, if I'd come and sing with them, you know. So I started doing that every now and again with a few different bands. And with some of them, it developed, you know, and started working together more, like Saint Deluxe from Glasgow. I mean, Joe Foster from Creation, I think he introduced me to them, Slaughter Joe. He did. And I think we did a show together in Glasgow, then we went into the studio together and started messing around with the song, and nothing really came of that song for a while. Eventually it did, but we'd go up and I had an effect on my writing. So I thought, well, I can write something better for that kind of thing. And so I wrote a few, and we went back into the studio, and that's how Hidden Fields started developing. And yeah, I mean, I'd basically just like sit down, play down the song on like a catalog electric guitar, you know, like a Tiesco type thing or something like that. And they'd be straight on it, you know, they'd have an arrangement for the bass and the drums and a couple of nudges, you know, or if they were stuck on a bit, you know, I'd have an idea, but didn't interfere too much. And before we barely even learnt it, we'd just start rolling takes. And quite often, as soon as you hit the record, they get it. And that's pretty much how that album was done with. And then the other guitarists would whack some stuff over the top, and you know, if I had any other things I wanted to add, and then vocals, and that was it. That one was almost like live in a room, you know. I mean, most of it was, you know.
So then you ended up doing a split release with Flavor Crystals.
Oh yeah.
Was that the first release you did with Flavor Crystals?
Yeah, it's the only one like we've done together, like with separate bands. But I mean, we've now kind of joined into another band.
I know.
Giant. So in fact, Ricky's away recording with them at the moment, putting some guitar on the next album.
Oh, cool! That's awesome. I saw that he said he was doing something about it. I couldn't remember if he had mentioned who it was at the time or not, but that's awesome.
Yeah, he's working on the second Foam Giant album.
Oh, cool.
First one's not. Well, I think the first one's just coming out now.
Yes, yeah. No, I've got some questions about that too. But before we get to there, I listened to Stone Tape also, which that is so cool. I love Stone Tape. That album is so interesting. I love how the vocals are kind of buried a little bit, and it's just got this crazy sound to it. But there's a theme to that whole album, right?
Kind of. We kind of. I use the theme. It's kind of theme. I mean, in the title, I suppose it's like it's a nod towards Stone Tape theory, where inanimate objects can hold memories. I mean, to me, like a record is kind of like Stone Tape, but you know.
Okay, all right, I get it now. That makes more sense now.
Yeah, it's kind of a loose. It's not like a concept album.
Okay. See, that's what I was thinking. That maybe.
But interestingly, that album was originally going to be a book. Like that label that came to see me after a show in Rome. And they asked me if I wanted to. They're book publishers, and they asked me if I wanted to write a book.
Oh wow!
About whatever I wanted it to be, you know. So I thought, yeah, that's interesting. So I started. But the writing just kept turning into songs. I said, look, I had a crack at it, but like, I think I basically just written another album. although a couple of those songs I'd actually written. As far back as Infinite Suns. While we're doing that noise stuff, I was actually writing songs on the side still.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. But and then they had to become a record label as well as a book publishing.
Hey, it's just another avenue for them.
Well, yeah.
At this time, when you're doing all this stuff, are you playing out a lot live? Are you taking these soundscapes and stuff out on the road?
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
Oh man, and I guess Telescope's fans are just used to the complete shifting sounds of the band at this point. That's got to be such a wild show. Are you playing old stuff along with the soundscapes in the show? I mean, how does a set list with such wild shifts in sound? How does I don't know. How do you do it? It's the only way to phrase it, really.
The live shows are always like where we're at that particular moment.
Okay.
So if it's a kind of a drone vibe, like experimental sort of thing, the whole show's like that. But we might do an experimental drone version of The Perfect Needle, or something else. You know, it's like, that's the way it goes down. And like now it's gravitated into kind of what the sound is on like a later album, Songs of Love and Revolution, you know.
Okay. Is there a lot of improvisation in the shows? Are you guys stretching things out, or is it pretty well stuff? You guys know what you're doing?
Not so much with the last time we went out. The last time, because leading up to that, the whole band thing from Hidden Fields up to Songs of Love and Revolution, the way it's kind of progressed live has been out of improvisation, bringing songs into that. And so, yeah, the whole set was just, to the uninitiated, it could seem like the whole set was just one song. Because there's no pauses, you know, for audience appreciation and ego massaging, you know. It's like, or practical things like tuning up.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but we've kind of gone back to, we play a set of songs now. And at the end, each one ends, you know.
Yeah, each one
Apart from the last one, one thing that we keep is we get an energy going at the end of the set, and we always kind of do this, and we leave it there. We leave the stage, and the music's still going, you know.
Oh man, that is awesome.
I mean, like the guitars could be hanging in the audience somewhere,
Yeah.
or one of the audience members can think that they're playing it, but it's really the effects.
That is great.
Like, it's a case of who's going to switch it off, you know, which is interesting to us every night, you know, because we never go back on and switch the amps off. It's forbidden in the band.
Oh wow. Oh, that is awesome.
We don't have it. It's like, who's going to switch it off? You know, and some venues can leave it going for like 45 minutes and everyone's outside smoking and it's still going on. And, you know.
See, that's what I would do.
It can be really beautiful. You know, sometimes I wish I'd recorded it.
Oh, yeah. Almost like a version of Metal Machine music where it's just.
Yeah, but this is them playing themselves.
Yeah,
it's not edited. It's all fluid, and everything happens naturally. You know.
See, I can understand that though, because if I was in that venue, I would like, you know what? I'm not touching. I don't want. I would end up breaking something. So I'm not switching anything off. When we shut down for the night and turn all the power up, that's when it goes off.
Yeah,
I would be frightened. I'm frightened to death to touch professional musicians' gear. I'm scared to death.
Sometimes you see the sound engineer coming on stage trying to work out where the sounds are coming from, and in the end, he just switches off all the amps. It can be quite brutal sometimes. Some of them are really cool about it. Some of them just fade down the house system after a while, and you can still hear it all going on the stage through the amplifiers.
Oh, that is awesome. I love that. So I'm a big fan of noise, so I love that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I love feedback and drones, and it's, oh man, that makes me want to come see a Telescope show.
Oh, there's plenty of that, but there's plenty of songs in there as well. Yeah.
And then Absence Presence came out, and is that just you doing everything on that? Because that was released during the whole pandemic.
Yeah, that's just acoustic. Yeah, I mean, like, they're actually the guys who put out Stone Tape. They formed an actual label now.
Oh, okay.
And they asked me to do an acoustic one because I'd done acoustic shows for them for Stone Tape. They put one on in Rome for like the release of it and everything.
Ah, okay.
And they really like the vibe of that, you know, just the acoustic, and at the most it has a Casio organ drone in sometimes. But
oh wow,
they asked me to basically record something along those lines, like how I do it live. And whenever I do those acoustic shows live, it can be a mixture of all sorts of things, really. Okay. Sometimes it can be a couple of old songs done differently, and it can be like songs I'm working on at the time, or songs that we just released. So I was like working on the Songs of Love and Revolution album, so quite a few songs from that ended up on there, but acoustic versions. Yeah,
like We See Magic and We Are Neutral, Unnecessary. One of the cool things that happens every once in a while with this podcast is I find a band that's been around for a while that I wasn't really familiar with, either because, you know, the music wasn't widely available in the U.S. or whatever reason, and I just kind of get drawn into it. And once I do that, I kind of become obsessive about it, and I got to get everything. So, and
right.
The Telescopes rapidly became one of those bands. I'm just fascinated by the entire discography and how it changes. And it changed again with the collaboration with Flavor Crystals again on the album that's coming out, because it hasn't at this time, it hasn't been released yet. Acetate Parade with Foam Giant.
Yeah.
So Foam Giant it's you and Flavor Crystals. It's not like it's the combination of the two bands, right? Am I reading that correctly?
It's basically Nat who plays bass in Flavor Crystals. It's his baby, really.
Okay.
he was quite secretive about the way he put the album together. Really.
Oh, really? That's fascinating.
Yeah, there's so many people playing on it. I mean, Son of Flavor Crystals. In fact, they're all on it, and there's loads of other people on there as well. And like every now and again, I'd be like, "Man, who's playing drums on that? It's incredible!" And there'd be some story about some guy.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Stuff, but like, yeah, he just like sort of asked me to write the lyrics and put vocals on some of the songs.
So your contribution is vocal, and you're not doing any of the guitar on it?
I don't do any of the music at all, just purely vocals and lyrics. That album's kind of half and half instrumental and maybe slightly more songs, like with vocals. But the next one we're working on at the moment, every song's got vocals on it, you know.
Oh, okay. Now, is that one where you're contributing to the music or just vocals?
No, we're keeping it the same
cool.
thing. We just get on with the music, and, you know, with like working on Telescope stuff, it means if he's doing all the music on that, then I've got the time to do it then, you know. Yeah. Because I'm always writing and, you know.
Oh, okay. So is there, I guess, I imagine there's just a lot of stuff that just hasn't come out then.
Yeah, I mean, I've almost finished another album now.
Oh, man.
Which is purely electronic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's using these little things from like pocket operators. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
No.
They're pretty cool little gadgets. They're about the size of a credit card, and you can program them up and get all these really lo-fi beats on them and stuff like that. So I'm using things like that and like mini corgs and all sorts of things, really.
Is the sound going to be similar to like third wave or unisex, or is it still a yet different progression of the Telescope sound?
No, it's different again.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
It's much more song-based than third wave.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And the electronics are a lot more, I don't know, maybe messed up in some way. They're like broken toys or something.
Oh, that is cool. With the way electronics have progressed and all, is this something that you're going to be able to take on the road? Are you doing it like solo or a full Telescopes band? Because I know with Ableton and all kinds of stuff, you can pretty much do whatever you want at this point.
Yeah, but it's got to be interesting. For me, like, it's still got to have that live thing. So it would have to be people playing these little gadgets and stuff.
That would be awesome.
In some way. But I'm not sure. You know, I'm kind of looking at merging that with like guitars as well, like, but not on this album.
Okay.
But at some point in the future, and just not restricting myself like in a way of making something either purely electronic or purely bands, which I have been doing. It's to just take down the barrier between the two of them and just let them filter into each other. But that's something for the future. So I mean, at the moment, like, we did one English tour for Songs of Love and Revolution, and a European tour for it was delayed until next month, and now it's been completely cancelled. So I'm not sure what's happening on the live front for a while. We can play the UK, I know that, but
yeah,
we can't keep promoting the same album in the UK.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's why, because like I mentioned earlier, I was at a show last night. So it was in a little dive bar. Things are open up over here, and I'd love to get you guys over to the U.S. someday. I'd love to hear live telescopes. Well, I guess I can hear it on the live releases, but I would love to see you guys in person because there's nothing like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very well playing in your own country at this sort of time, but it's the traveling abroad that causes the problems because, you know, if you're traveling through lots and lots of different countries in front of 100 people every night, there's a good chance one of you's going to catch it, and then everybody has to isolate. So that's the whole tour isolating, and gigs cancelled, and that costs.
Yeah, and the cost of just getting you guys over here, the visas and all that, I've heard it's astronomical.
Yeah, I think did it change with Trump or something? I don't know.
It's just insane. I wish we could get, because I've also heard the opposite is true. Like if going over to the UK, or it's actually quite inexpensive for a band to go over and be able to play in the UK.
That's our special relationship with the US.
It's ridiculous. It sucks because I love so many UK bands. I want you guys to come over here and play so I can see you live.
Yeah, it's probably easier for you to come over here.
It might actually be cheaper for me to get a plane ticket and fly over there.
Cheaper for you to get a private jet and come over.
Probably. Well, so you've got another album that you're working on. Is there a projected... Well, I mean, gosh, I probably shouldn't even say that because I think the Foam Giant hasn't even been officially released yet, has it?
No, but I think is it March, or I think it's March it comes out.
March 1st.
Ah, right, yeah, I thought it was.
This is available on Bandcamp. There's 2 extra tracks on the vinyl. That's not on the digital album, right?
I think it's available on the Flavor Crystal site as well. I don't think that links to...
Oh, okay, good. Because I'm one of those guys that I don't like just digital only. I really feel I love having a physical copy in my hands with vinyl, CD, or apparently cassettes are making a comeback. So
we just did a cassette.
I can't believe cassettes are making a comeback. It's insane. I don't have anything I can play them.
Sound of them. I love the sound of them. I think they're great.
My son is huge into them. He loves them. He's 18 and he.
Right, yeah.
Fortunately,
that's a nice warm sound on cassette.
That's true. Yeah. I guess I've always been a big fan of CDs, but that's what I grew up with. But again, it's something it was something I could hold on to, and I know that I've got it. So
yeah.
But, well, Stephen, I know I've kept you for quite a while today, and I'm sure you've got better things to do with your day than just sit here and talk to me. So I want to thank you so much for your time. Where can people, what's the best way for them to follow you, to keep track of Telescope's music, and if you're in the UK, shows?
This is on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Bandcamp as well.
Okay. So the new album is coming out. Well, by the time this releases, the Foam Giant will be out, and you're already working on another Telescopes release. Is there a time frame for that, or are you just still in the recording process, recording?
I'm finishing off mixing at the moment. It'll be out this year.
Oh, excellent. And I can't wait to hear these little credit card type of sized electronic things. I'm going to have to look that up, too, because that sounds really cool.
Yeah, pocket operators.
Thank you so much for this. I'm so happy that I've discovered, maybe 35 years late, but I've discovered the Telescopes, and I can go back and I've got so much to listen to again, because I tried to go through as much of the discography as I could since we set this up, and it was quite the task. But it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun. So I really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure.